Come on, man, you can't even be serious with me right now as Bleacher Report has put out one of the more ridiculous mock trades we've seen all season. It does have the Spurs landing Lamelo Ball for a plethora of first-round picks, Keldon Johnson, Tre Jones, and Malachi Branham, but this has a lot of Spurs and Hornets fans and NBA fans riled up. We'll be getting into that in just a little bit, but I also want to talk about a couple other things in this video before we get there, specifically about Charles Bassey and Zach Collins and this battle that these guys are having down low right now, with a lot of Spurs fans siding with one of them over the other. That plus more coming up in this episode of Spurs Digest. But the first thing I actually want to do in this video, just a quick shout out to Chris Paul. I know we all know this right now. He's second all time in assists, but to me, this Stockton record is one of those unattainable records until we get an absolute generational assist getting point guard. So for right now, this is kind of the modern day record, if you look at it in those eyes. Though to say modern day, even though Stockton set this record like only 25 years ago, is kind of crazy. But just want to give a little shout out to Chris Paul. We all appreciate him. He's now with the Spurs. He's had nothing but good things to say about the Spurs org, so congrats to him. This is one of those records that people are going to be chasing for years and years and years. Kind of like that Ray Allen three-point record, if you want to think of it that way, or I guess James Harden now, where Steph Curry's so far in first. So shout out to Chris Paul. But I want to get more into Charles Bassey and Zach Collins, because I know probably you watching this video right now have an opinion on this. Whether it's pro Zach Collins or pro Charles Bassey, it's probably pro Charles Bassey. I want to hear from you down in the comments before we even get into this, because the reason I'm talking about this is because of the little stretch of the last 5 games for Charles Bassey. Now, I will say, not all these games are spectacular, but it's more so the last 3. 5 points, 3 boards, okay against Chicago. He wasn't amazing against Chicago, especially defensively. The shots at the rim, the Bulls were shooting pretty good at the rim against Bassey, but he started to get into a bit of a groove against the Kings. He put up 7 points, 3 blocks, showing that rim protection. And then against the New Orleans Pelicans, he went out 16 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks on 50% shooting. Charles Bassey is making a name for himself, and a lot of people, especially early in the season after Zach Collins struggles, said that this guy should be the full-time backup center. Now, I want to give my 2 cents on this, because I think Charles Bassey's great. He's averaging, 4 and 4-ish this season. And I think in certain moments, he has looked really, really good. My problem is that it's not all moments. My problem is the inconsistency with Charles Bassey. There's some games where he looks great. He's protecting the rim at a very high level, and he looks like he's in the flow of the offense. But there's other games where Charles Bassey looks completely lost on offense and on defense. But the thing is, the sparks are there. The little flashes, the little moments, these games with a double-double with 4 blocks, you're like, this guy could be something great. I actually just think it's a matter of time before he really starts to properly get into the flow on defense and offense, whether that means watching some more film, whether that means practicing a bit more with maybe the starters or the guys who run the bench unit, guys who play a few more minutes. I don't know. Because when you compare him to Zach Collins, I don't know. Collins is fine. 6 points a game, 3 rebounds a game. His 3-point percentage is still not what we want it to be. I mean, when we traded for Zach Collins, we got him way back from the Portland Trailblazers. We're like, man, that 3-point shot could be great. One of those bench stretch bigs. 6'11" and has been able to shoot threes, but he only shoots threes assisted. 34% of all his shots are threes, and he's only shooting 33% on them. His shooting from 2 is not horrible, but his defense has also not been very good. And I think that's the big thing. When you have a stretch big that can't really shoot threes at the level you want him to shoot, who's not giving you much on the defensive end either, it's easy to say, let's just toss in Charles Bassey, who, even though he can't really stretch the floor much, he's one of those guys that's going to be locked down around the rim and basically give opposing teams nightmares when they're trying to drive in, when they have to go up on Wemby, and then they go to the bench unit and you have Charles Bassey in there, who's able to get lots and lots of blocks as well. So it's a bit of a give and take, but I want to know your guys' opinion, because I'm still not sold that Bassey should get that job right now every single game, but sometimes it feels like it's trending that way. And this last game against the Pelicans was definitely a big moment for Bassey to play that many more minutes than Zach Collins and perform at the high level. You can expect him to get those more and more minutes as the time goes on now. I just hope that the consistency stays, because that is the big key for our boy Charles Bassey. But let's get into this crazy thing I showed you off the bat, because I don't know. Sometimes trade talks get crazy, and look, we like to talk about the serious and maybe sometimes the unserious, but when there's a player with the caliber of Lamelo Ball getting tweeted by NBA Central with trade reports, not reports I should say, proposals coming from Bleacher Report, we're going to talk about it here on the show. And leave your thoughts on this right now down in the comments, because I know a lot of you are probably going crazy over this already. So let's just cover up the bottom half of this and just say Spurs get Lamelo Ball. Yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with LaMelo Ball. I think he fits on this team. Chris Paul gone, bring in LaMelo Ball. Awesome. I think Lamelo Ball and Victor Wembanyama would be one of the most fun duos in the NBA. People of all ages are going to become Spurs fans just because of that. Lamelo is such a popular player himself. My problem with this is just the trade package makes no sense. Like, let's just be honest with ourselves. You're not landing Lamelo Ball for Keldon Johnson, Tre Jones, Malachi Branham, and 3 first-round picks, one of which is lottery protected in a very solid draft in 2025. And, like, yeah, a couple unprotected picks in 2027. Great. One of them's the Atlanta Hawks. But again, if you're the Spurs, you'd rather give away future first-round picks than current first-round picks. That's why this 2025 is lottery protected, because the Spurs are not some powerhouse yet. But the idea is they will be in a couple of years, especially if they land Lamelo Ball. Like, look, the Spurs have the draft capital. This is from Spot Track, by the way. Really, really great tracker to see the protections on picks and stuff. I just really like this Spot Track thing. I think it's really useful. Like, they have a ton of first-round picks, right? And some of them are lottery protected. Some of them have various protections. Some of them aren't. Of course, these Hawks ones are the big ones, honestly. These Hawks picks are actually just so crazy. That DeJounte Murray stuff. DeJounte Murray came out and said some good things about the Spurs. Mitch Johnson and Stephon Castle, some cool stuff. But look at the draft capital just over the next 3 years. Now, again, not all these picks will convey. The Chicago stuff's a bit weird because it's like, if it doesn't convey, it goes to the next year. If it doesn't convey, it goes to the next year, and then it'll turn into a second. But still, the point is the Spurs have a ridiculous amount of draft capital. So when we're looking at a big name trade, not even necessarily LaMelo Ball, who may or may not ever be on the trade block from the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, they'd be crazy to not trade him for one of the biggest hauls in the entire NBA. Like, honestly, if I'm Charlotte and I'm talking to San Antonio about a LaMelo Ball trade, I'm starting with Stephon Castle and like 4 first-round picks. And, would the Spurs do that? I don't know. But LaMelo Ball is a 30-point per game player who can average 10 assists. He's an amazing three-point shooter. Bit injury prone? Yeah, sure he is. But for a player of that caliber, all NBA level, you got to overpay for these guys, right? So anyway, that's just what I'm saying. It's one of those where the Hornets will probably always say, like, you need to give me more. You need to give me Castle, maybe another prospect, and a bunch of picks. And the Spurs will say, well, no, you're just giving me this one player. Anyway, what I am saying, though, is if we're looking at a big-name trade, let's ignore that it's LaMelo Ball. Let's just say it's someone else, right? Some other big-name player that becomes available in a trade, someone that would work very well for Victor Wembanyama. The Spurs have a very, very good amount of draft capital and young players that aren't necessarily cornerstones of the future that they could move. And if we go back to this trade again, just ignore LaMelo for a second, because this is more about the grand scheme of the Spurs trading opportunities. You have guys like Keldon Johnson, who again has had a 20-point per game season. I don't think he holds that much value in trade talks, if I'm being honest, but I think he could really thrive in the right situation. I just think right now in San Antonio, like, he's just not being as consistent as I want him to be. I think a change of scenery is good for him. And I think some team will pay more than how we value him as Spurs fans. Tre Jones, would love to keep him, but again, if you're getting a point guard back, why not give him up? Branham, him and Wesley, both could be gone. One could be gone after this year. I don't know. Well, they both actually got that contract extended for that 1 extra year with the option, but still, like, probably not part of the long-term plans. And if you want to give up some of these guys, even like, I don't even know. You don't know who they're going to draft this year. There's so many other young players the Spurs could dangle in deals, players that are good for them that other teams might overpay for. You combine those with first-round picks. I think the framework is there for the Spurs to make some kind of blockbuster deal. Why else have they stocked up on all this draft capital? Part of it is so that they can remain competitive year over year, especially because they have picks from other teams that seem to not be taking that jump. They can go in and get really high draft picks after a successful season. Look at the Boston Celtics and how that worked out for them, So that can work for the Spurs, and they have the young players to be able to make some trade like this. But this one here is just crazy. I don't think this is ever going to happen. I mean, LaMelo Ball, that is going to take a lot more. You're not giving up a bunch of bench players and one protected first and a couple of unprotected first in the future for him. But let me know your guys' thoughts. I mean, if LaMelo was available, would you even entertain a trade for him? I would. I think he's a great player. I think he'd fit with Wemby. I just don't think this gets it done. But I love to talk about Spurs trades, especially with you guys. Leave your thoughts on everything down below if you enjoyed. And also, if you're down there, leave a like on the video. It helps us out a ton. If you made it to this point and you enjoyed this video, I think we deserve at least a like. It helps us out. And hey, you get to click a button and see a number go up. What's better than that? I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you in the next one.